All right, so I'm going to go through the 10 commandments and explain for an atheist crowd why those commandments make sense even though you're an atheist. I see myself as an atheist. Really, I don't even care if God exists or not. This is how I see it. I just think it's just so I don't care kind of situation. I still believe those rules are super important no matter what, because there is something deeper there. Not my usual filming spot, but let's try it. ידעתי בכם היום את השמיים ואת הארץ. החיים והמוות נתתי לפניך, הברכה והקללה, ובחרת בחיים, למען תחיה אתה וזרעך. And in English, this day I call the heavens and earth as witnesses against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Now choose life, so that you and your children may live. Wait, that's not part of the 10 commandments. If you know that, I mean, you know something. That's amazing. And by the way, life is not the only thing that is mentioned in that section that I've been reading. I just chose the part of life, and I'm gonna get to it a bit later. And no, those are not new 10 commandments. I'm gonna go through the 10 commandments that are written in the Bible, in the Torah. It's written in not more than once. I'm gonna go through maybe I'll touch on both versions a little bit, but they're similar enough. I think a lot of atheists, the way I saw it, they look at the 10 commandments and they look at the first 5 and they think that it doesn't speak to them. They think that it's not about them. They think it's irrelevant. This is a religious thing. Well, I'm gonna say you're wrong. You're very, very wrong, because the 10 commandments are that's a genius 10 commandments that were written in a way that a person that chooses life, who wants to have a society that is healthy, that is functioning, and that is made to last. You know what? This is for atheists. I know you guys don't believe in much, so I'll prove it to you. Just looking for it in the Bible. Oh no, it might be getting dark. I mean, it took me too long to set my things up. So here's what I'm gonna go do. I'm gonna read the commandments, and I'm gonna do it in Hebrew, because the translation, once you translate something, you have an interpretation built into it. And it's different than reading the Hebrew source, because it doesn't have that. It's ambiguous the way it was originally, or disambiguous. Let's start. וידבר אלוהים את כל הדברים האלה לאמור, אנוכי אדוני אלוהיך אשר הוציאתך מארץ מצרים באמת עבדים. So it starts with declaration. So this declaration is very common in the ancient world. Every law collection that we have starts with the king or the appointed person, whether it's by society or himself or whatever, saying that who I am and that I have the permit and the authority of the gods to give you those commandments, those laws. And what is different with the laws here in the commandments that are in the Torah is that there is no mediator. It's straight from God. It's straight from the source, and it's not a person, but just a rule that all the people, all the Israelites have witnessed together the creation and the acceptance of those rules. And the reason I say that is because those rules are eternal. So there you start with, hey, this is why you need to listen to me. It's important when you want to give something to people at those ancient times. This is just a convention that the book follows, right? That the commandments follow. לא יהיה לך אלוהים אחרים על פניי. You will not have a God לא יהיה לך אלוהים אחרים על פניי. This is very basic. You will not have a God that is not me. And here is the atheists are like, okay, there is a God there. But the thing is that in Judaism, and I'm going to go deeper into it in the next commandment, it's not really clear what is God or who is God. Even the name Yehovah, which might have different reasons, but in today's world in Hebrew, it sounds like a combination of Haya, Hiye, Vehove, which is was, will be, and now. And this is where I guess I'm losing a lot of atheists. But here's what want to say. A God is a higher calling, is a higher something, is something that you do and follow without necessarily understanding the immediate consequences of. This one is just a prerequisite to say the commandments that are written in the Ten Commandments are universal in a sense, will always be true in a sense, and you will not have a different agenda come before the agenda that I'm about to present you with. Even those who are atheists have some sort of image, which I'm going to go next to, this is the next commandment, not to have an image of what is God or what is not God. לא תעשה לך פסל וכל תמונה אשר בשמיים ימעל ואשר בארץ מתחת ואשר במים מתחת לארץ. This commandment is pretty long, and it also shows how genius the commandment is. Do not have an image of God or a statue of God. And I know a lot of people think it means idols, but here I'm going to show you some other images of God. One image, truth. Truth is an image of God because you can write it down, and once you have that as an image, that's an image of God. So one can say, like, I follow truth. This is my God. Whatever I do is following the truth. But what if truth is what will bring down somebody's life? Is the truth when you live in a certain society, let's say, where there are certain rules that would lead to somebody knowing the truth? For example, if you are gay, is the commandment or thinking that God is truth? What do you do if you live in a society where somebody asks you if someone is gay, but that could be his death sentence? Is it really worth it? Is this God really worth it? No. This is why there is no image of God or statue of God. And it goes way deeper than that, because more than anything, it's not worth fighting whether God is the sun or God is a person, humanoid with an elephant head. Those kind of arguments can devastate societies. For what? For nothing. And also same thing with atheism. You think you don't have a God? Well, here is what atheists believe in, right? Maybe, like some would say, nothing. And atheists would disagree with it, and then a smartest can come and say, hey, you guys do believe in God. If you believe in something, that there is a God, there is something beyond, that you cannot explain why you choose to do something or not the other thing. Here's another thing that atheists may believe in. This, you are alone. This is what also an atheism could make you believe. You're alone, and whatever happens is like your self-preservation come before anything else. That can also be seen as a way of atheistic thinking. This is why the Judaism goes so much towards do not speak of it, don't bring up God, don't talk about God, don't justify your actions by using God, because you don't have an idea, you don't have an image, and you don't have a statue or anything that you can imagine in your mind, imagine, that is God. And that brings us to the next thing. So what happens if somebody worships a wrong God? What somebody worships truth? It sounds good and amazing, but then it doesn't prove itself, because suddenly you have to do something like telling your gay rooftop throwing regime that your friend is gay. It is the truth. Is it worth it though? This is where the next thing comes, because this is not where this commandment ends. There is another. It continues. לא תשתחווה להם ולא תעבדם, כי אנוכי אדוני אלוהיך, על קנה פקוד עוון אבות על בנים, על שילשים ועל רבעים לשונאי. So this commandment, this section is hard to translate and also hard to understand, but this is how it's perceived. What happens when you do worship a false god? So what happens is that this is what Judaism says, this is punishment. You get punished by the universe, by God, by reality. The reality will come and slap you in the face when you don't worship the right God. It's not something that a person can judge for you. לא תישא את שם אדון אלוהיך לשווא. You should not use God's name. And that's the next commandment. Like, you see how one commandment automatically leads to another, right? If it says, I'm your God, and here is the basic principles you need to follow, it means that make sure that you follow them, whatever you believe in. There is nothing that will override those commandments. And right now, as I see it, those commandments prove themselves to be true, to hold a society, to keep a society healthy, and for progress. This is why the Judeo-Christian values suddenly become so relevant in every conversation we're having, especially when it comes to the West facing Islam, because Islam does not, out of so many things that Islam plagiarized from other religions, it chose to skip the 10 commandments. Though that basic decision means that whoever the Muslims worship, that is not our God. This is not our God. Because remember, the God that we believe in gave us the 10 commandments. And you cannot ignore the 10 commandments and claim that you believe in God. Even if you're an atheist and you follow those commandments, then it's okay, so you are an atheist, so what? It doesn't matter. There is no image. Nothing is also an image. Nothing is a nothing. It's just blank. It says that you can worship the wrong God for a generation or 2 or 3, but by the 4th generation, you're gonna pay for it. If you don't fix your ways, if the people that think, okay, so this is the God that my generation worshipped, or my parents' generation worshipped, and it worked for them, it worked fine. But the thing is, it's not gonna work long term. This is the threat here. You think, yes, you can get away with communism 1 generation. You might have even get away with communism 2 generations, or 3 or 4 generations. But at some point, that falsehood will come and bite you, will come and get you, because it's a false God, it's a false narrative, it's a false agenda. Why am I saying communism? Of course, I don't know if you remember, but the 10th commandment is by principle exactly what communism is overriding. The 10 commandments and communism cannot live together because of the 10th commandment. That sounds weird when you read it, because it's a matter of heart. It's not something you can know about anyone. But there is smartness there, because that 1 commandment disqualifies communism. So at some point, right, it's not that somebody will come and punish you, but at some point, straying away from God will be a punishment for society. Because there is a limit of how much you can get away with thinking that communism is a good idea. Islam is the same. When it doesn't expand, when it doesn't find, it's like a pyramid scheme, right? In a vacuum, when society has borders, right? This is what came later. So Judaism believes in borders. It believes in borders. Everything is, here's the area that you are supposed to live in. This is the promised land. Why is there a promised land? Because Judaism believes in borders. Your belief, your system, your law belong to a border. Because if there is a falsehood, false belief, false idol, and you become a globalist and you spread it everywhere, then society is doomed. Like the whole society, all of the nations are doomed. So whatever you do, whatever you believe in, first experiment on a scale that has borders. And what is Tikkun Olam versus Or LaGoyim? So there are 2 notions of Judaism. One is woke, which is Tikkun Olam, fixing the world, which I hate. I'm gonna make a different video about Or LaGoyim versus Tikkun Olam, versus light to the nations. And light to the nations is like setting by example. Look at us, the way we're building a society, and the way we structure the society, we follow those rules, they follow the 10 commandments, and our society is proving that the laws that we came up with are worth following. right? So this is light to the nations. Hey, by conducting this experiment, we will not claim globally that we are the ones that are right. We don't know that. We need to keep our nation in the borders, right? Keep it in the borders and then prove that our ways are successful long-term. And by that, we can pave the way for other nations that can adopt our laws. You know what I should do? Maybe I should make I know what I'll do. After that, I'll make a clip for every commandment separately to even delve deeper into it. So, לא תישא את שם אדוני לשווא, כי לא ינקה אדוני את אשר יישא שמו לשווא. Okay, so this is how amazing it is. So, do not use God's names in vain, and God will not clean the name of those. The beauty of it is what is the punishment here? Is that it seems like the kids are running. It seems like what it is saying is do not make promises. This is the later Jewish interpretation. The way, don't make promises, don't swear in the name of God. Do not make promises in the name of God. Don't speak in the name of God. And what is even worse, punishing in the name of God. Because what will happen is that your name will get tarnished. Your promises that you didn't keep because you said God will promise, God will make it happen, or your punishments that you inflicted upon people in God's name, and that's even worse. The thing will happen is that there are a lot of people. Hitler also said that he believes that he's doing and following God's commandments, and he, with that, allowed himself to punish people. He wasn't the only one, but the punishment here for those people who do that is that their name will be tarnished. They will not be remembered in a positive light. They will be remembered as unholy. Let me say that. זכור את יום השבת לקדשו, ששת ימים תעבוד ועשית כל מלאכתך, ויום השביעי שבת לאדוני אלוהיך לא תעשה כל מלאכה, ואתה ובנך ובתך עבדך ואמתך ובהמתך וגרך אשר בשעריך. Okay, so for the Sabbath, there are two different explanations when it comes to Deuteronomy and Shemot. Another thing that might bring down the society, look at what's going on in Japan, where people work themselves to death, and because they work so much, they lose everything else. There is no family life. There is no prosperity. People cannot have kids. Why? This is the Sabbath. This is the commandment of the Sabbath. Everyone are commanded to rest, animals included, humans, everybody. Why? The one thing is, there are several reasons here, but if you look at it in a modern perspective, why does a nation fail when it doesn't believe that rest is mandatory? We can see why. Because in Japan and South Korea, where work is the God, where working day and night is your God, is the higher calling, everything else falls apart. Everything else falls apart. So this is the Sabbath. כבד את אביך ואת אמך למען יאריכון ימיך על אדמה אשר אדוני אלוהיך נתן לך. Okay, respect your mother and father, so you will live a long life. This is a call against revolutions, against a fast change, because why does it say, what is the respect here? It doesn't say obey. It doesn't say obey your parents, but respect your parents. And respect means before you change anything, before you introduce some sort of chidush, some sort of new interpretation, some sort of understand your parents, understand them, respect them. Even Islam, right? There is something about Islam. If you just throw it down the drain and take away everything in Islam, there are elements in Islam that Islam even adopted from Judaism, like tzedakah, like giving charity, like helping the poor, like the laws of war, right? The laws of war are also from the Torah. They do not burn down trees and things like that. They are also from the Torah. Throwing away Islam doesn't necessarily mean that you'll get something better. It might, in the worst case scenario, it might mean that you'll get whatever Islam does, everything, because everybody, like, you know, if there are strong people, let's say dictators who desire to have relations with that are inappropriate, right? This is a human tendency. It has nothing to do with Islam. But what you can get is that right with it, you're gonna throw away the charity. You're gonna throw away these sentences that say do not burn trees. You're gonna throw away the spirituality. You're gonna throw away the history and the tradition. This is what it means, respect your parents. Islam is completely wrong. Same with communism. Communism is completely wrong. But when people are going too hard against it, even when I see things like that, I say, yes, but there was a pain that the communism addressed a certain pain that was a real pain, right? That needs to be addressed. The way they went about it is completely wrong. But even if your parents are communist, respect them enough to try to understand what pain caused a false ideology like communism to arise. Lo tirtzach, do not murder. Lo tin'af. Lo tin'af, I will not translate this part, because the ni'uf, the adultery, right, is not clear what it means when it's written here. But I'm gonna just make a fast comment. Lo tirtzach is, first of all, as we can tell later, is that, for example, I think it was the reason that the draconian laws were written, if I'm not mistaken, is that because of blood vengeance, right? So you start murdering and the society falls apart because there is no end to the cycle of blood vengeance. So it can make a society fall apart. No adultery. So this is the same thing. It's more complicated because even the Bible describes cases where adultery, even in its most narrow way of thinking about adultery of a married woman having relations outside of her marriage, even in this narrow, the Bible has examples where even that is celebrated because there are higher values. But why is it here? Because adultery, when people start cheating on each other, breaks down a society. We can see it, for example, in the Black community in the United States, where they stopped going against adultery. They stopped going against it, and it breaks down a society. So this is why it's here. Understanding that cheating, those relations between men and women, it can lead to the destruction of a society. No, go away, children. Okay. I hope you'll still be able to hear me. Lo tinaf, lo tignov. Do not steal, do not kidnap. Those are two in one. What do I do? Well, I moved the location because those kids started rollerblading next to me. And of course, once I moved, they moved with me. But it's okay. This is a price I am willing to pay. I actually like how I look with a hat. Maybe I'll keep it on for the next ones. And it's gonna be shorter now. So, because those are the commandments that atheists understand without like too much explanation, right? Because the first 5 are the ones that atheists struggle with more than the last 5. But I still want to talk about it. So, lo tinaf, adultery, breaking down a society, I went through it. Lo tignov. So lo tignov, do not steal, but it's more than stealing, it's actually kidnapping. And I want the couple to pass there. Talking loudly. Jay's always are so loud, man. Such a difference. Okay. Alright. Yeah. Do not steal, do not kidnap. I think this one is a bit easier to understand, so. Lo ta'aneh bere'echa ad sheker. Okay, so this one is also different in Deuteronomy. Because here it says do not give false testimony, but there it says do not give false testimony for nothing. It's not for lying, it's for nothing. I guess like maybe there at that point it was like, you know what, maybe if somebody comes and asks you about somebody's sexuality and you know it puts them in risk, maybe you should not this is for nothing. That would be like saying the truth would be for nothing. So it's a bit more sophisticated, in my opinion. But it also sounds like do not torture your fellow by giving false testimony or giving a testimony that is unnecessary. By the way, like, I don't want to get too much into it, but it's very different from how testimonies were treated in the old world in the Near East, from other records that we have, where if you say something, you are responsible in bringing the proof that that thing that you're saying actually happened. But here we see that, no, we do not demand to prove something, but you cannot lie either. And the last one, לא תחמוד בית רעך, לא תחמוד אשת רעך. Here the main difference between Deuteronomy and Shemot is that the order is different and the words are different. They use a different word for the wife, for wanting somebody else's wife. But this is an interesting one because it says do not want something that is not yours. And of course, nobody else can know what you want or you don't unless you announce it. But it says, like, just try not to want what is not yours. And this is, for me, the number one commandment that avoids something like communism from developing. What is yours, what's not yours is not yours. That's it. There are a lot of laws later on that say that you have to take care of the poor in your city, especially in the ultra-Orthodox Jewish communities. You are obligated, they're obligated. They have such an incredible welfare infrastructure just built into the community and also same thing with communities outside of Israel that were Jewish historically. They took care of each and every individual in the community. So there are laws that do address the pain that communism was caused by, right? There is this pain that created communism, that there are laws about it, but the basic reason communism exists is this want. I want something that is not necessarily mine or somebody else has. It's so fundamental that you say just don't want it, right? And if you want somebody else's wife because of justice reason, justice is a different reason. It's not because you lust or because you want, right? Your wife, maybe somebody else took her away from you. She's not yours, right? If she wants to be with a different person, she's not yours to lust. But if she was taken away from you, then you shall seek justice. But it's not this is not necessarily yours. It's just so fundamental. Just don't want it for the wrong reasons. Let me say it like that, because life is more complicated. And the genius over the Ten Commandments is because it says do not murder, but just for the sake of not murdering. Not because you're going to get punished, not because of anything like that. Do not murder because murdering is the wrong thing to do. Do not steal because it's the wrong thing to do. It's a new concept, right? It's not like, hey, do not do something because you're going to get punished. No, do not do something because it's the wrong thing to do. And when it comes to the commandments that are around God, it's not humans that are supposed to punish you. But what will happen when you worship the wrong thing is that even if you won't be punished, the next generations will be punished. Because this is what happens when you follow the wrong morals, when you follow the wrong ethics. It's just natural. Because there are two aspects, right? If you're an Israeli, then there is another obligation in Judaism that is important, which is living in Israel. If you're an Israeli living in Israel, believing in God is not necessarily as important, as critical as it is if you're a Jew living abroad. And this is where the religion or nationality conflict comes from. And this is why I say that for Jews abroad, it's a religion. It has to be a religion. But for Jews in Israel, it's a nationality, right? This is the nation that they believe in. It's the country they believe in. It's the values that they believe in. But if there is no God, then it's very hard to continue without faith, to preserve those laws without faith. Is really, really hard when you are abroad. So this is where Judaism turned into a religion. It's a mechanism that helped it save itself abroad. Because when it comes to the nation itself, the Israelites, like the Muslims love to say, how many times have they sinned and they worshipped false idols and things like that. But then in the end of the day, they were like, you know what, those idols were false. We'll go back to the laws that worked for us, that kept us strong as a nation, that kept our society functioning. And this is why the Bible is so strong. So the faith part, like the religious part, is there a God that created the universe? Is it critical or not? It depends on where you are, physically, geographically, how strong is your society and things like that. One of the reasons my father said like he didn't want to move to the United States is because he's not religious. He wanted to be Jewish because he believes in the Jewish nation and he believes in the Jewish history and the laws of Judaism, but not the religion, but not God, but not the faith part. This part, and I agree, it's not something I gravitate towards either. But you cannot stay Jewish if you don't have faith in the ceremonial aspects of Judaism. If you don't have that faith in those ceremonies, then it's really hard to stay Jewish. This is why the commandments, like what you eat, how much you pray, what you wear, and things like that. This is something that is meant to always remind you that you are different from other nations around you, which is kind of easy to remember if you speak a different language, if you have your borders. It's easier to remember like when you're like that, right? But it's hard to remember that when you are abroad and then suddenly wearing a kippah and setting yourself apart becomes critical when just by your children know automatically because you wear something different, that you're different than the others. And then as they grow up, they get to experience the laws and the wisdom and the history of the Jewish people. Whereas if you live in a nation, then you experience the stories and we all have the same ethos. So it's different. It's very different. So thank you so much for listening. I hope I've convinced you that there is a lot of wisdom in Judaism, and it doesn't have to be because you believe in a certain God, a certain type of God. In fact, it goes against Judaism if you believe in a certain God. If you have an image in your head, I believe it goes against Judaism. And this is why atheists, right, those who don't believe that necessarily there is a greater force, can believe in Judaism or in Jewish law or in a lot of those things that have created Judaism. I realized that even going through the laws once, it was kind of slow. There is so much to say. I would love to say on every and each law how it innovated, how different it is from what existed before and after, and how different it is from other nations and the way other nations think, and what makes the Judo-Christian world special as well. Like, comment, subscribe. I would love. I think finally I've made a video that I'm not going to get demonetized, but if you want to support me, I appreciate it anyway. I have a buy me coffee link below, and that's it. Love you. See you later. I hope the lighting will stay good. And is a good book. It's a good book. I recommend. Oh, it's getting dark. One quick mention. I started with it reading between You Choosing Life. I did that because I wanted to show that the life is by itself something super important that can stand in principle above truth, that I wanted to show the limitation of saying that God is truth, that God is life, or God is love. Because life, God is life, is that what you choosing life, but then going against other moral laws, then this is not choosing life. This is choosing your life specifically, not necessarily life as in preservation for a society. And truth is great, is amazing, but it has its limits, because sometimes the truth, it's truth, but it's better to preserve life than keep the truth. And love is also limited, because you love the neighbor, right? The commandment, ואהבת לרעך כמוך. And you need to love fellow. I don't know why neighbor was the word that was chosen to translate רעך, but like your fellow humans. Because if you love someone and you pity them, you feel mercy for them, but by doing that, you are actually putting other people in danger. You can do this. There is a sentence where I mean, people who mercy the cruel end up being cruel to those who deserve mercy. So love is also limited. Love is important, but it has a limit. Life is important, but is life of a society. Truth is important. It's a value that you have to follow, but there is limit to truth. And this is why you don't have an image of God. Everything is put in a person. And this is why there is a moral code, right? No cheating, no stealing, no kidnapping. Those are values to follow that make sense, that you need to guide you, but they also need to guide you in the greater sense, not necessarily you in your personal life. There is a reason why adultery is not defined. There is a reason why stealing and kidnapping is not defined. There is a reason why murder is not defined, right? Murder is different than killing. It's a different act. It's murder. There is a reason why it's not defined here, because there is a general spirit, right? The spirit of what is important that we need to preserve. And having an image of God that is absolute is very problematic when you have the bigger picture in mind. That's it. That's why I started with that, because I just wanted to demonstrate that creating an image of God that is like truth goes against the commandment that says choose life. And others, you know. Judaism is a smartest religion. What can I say? Religion, nationality, set of laws. Depends on where you live and who you are. See ya.